On a warm summer afternoon in August 2021, a 911 call came into the Moab City Police Department in Utah. The caller, a man who'd been watching a couple near a park entrance, described what he'd seen in plain, stunned language. The gentleman was slapping the girl, he said. Officers were dispatched. They pulled over a white Ford Transit van on the highway leading into Arches National Park. Inside that van were two people, a 22-year-old woman named Gabrielle Petito, and the man who would later confess to killing her. What happened next, what the officers said, what they saw, what they chose to do, would haunt the nation for years. Because within 16 days of that traffic stop, Gabby Petito was dead, and the world was watching. Gabrielle Venora Petito was born on March 19, 1999, in Bethpage, New York, a quiet suburb on Long Island. From the beginning, she was described by everyone who knew her the same way: warm, creative, full of life. She grew up in a close family. Her parents divorced when she was young, and she split her time between her mother, Nicole Schmidt, and her father, Joseph Petito. But both parents described her as their light. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room and make it feel different. In high school, Gabby discovered a love of travel and adventure. She dreamed of seeing the country, the mountains, the deserts, the open roads she'd only seen in photographs. It was a dream she would eventually chase down with everything she had. In 2017, when she was 18, Gabby met Brian Laundrie at a house party in Suffolk County, New York. Brian was a year older, quiet, introverted, described by some as artistic. He grew up in Roslyn Heights, not far from where Gabby was raised. The two began dating, and in the years that followed, they became inseparable. By 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, they had moved together to Northport, Florida, a small city on the Gulf Coast, to live with Brian's parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie. It was there that the couple hatched the plan that would define everything. They would buy a van, convert it into a mobile home, and drive across America. Gabby was already building a presence on social media, a YouTube channel called Nomadic Static, where she documented their travels. The couple had gone on shorter road trips before, but this was going to be different. This was going to be the big one. 4 months, all 50 states, every national park they could reach. In July of 2021, Brian proposed on a beach in Florida. Gabby said yes. She posted the moment to Instagram with a single word caption: forever. She was engaged, in love, and 2 weeks away from the adventure of her life. On July 2nd, 2021, the summer was ahead of them. The van was packed. Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie left Florida and headed north. She had no idea it would be the last time she ever left. The early weeks of the trip looked from the outside like a dream. Gabby posted constantly to Instagram, to TikTok, to YouTube. She filmed herself making coffee at dawn in empty parking lots. She stood at the edge of canyon overlooks, laughing into the camera, hair blowing sideways. She hashtagged everything van life. She tagged locations. She wrote captions about freedom and gratitude and living with less. Her followers grew. Her energy was contagious. But people close to the couple would later tell investigators that the relationship behind the camera was more complicated. Friends described friction, arguments, a dynamic that made some people uncomfortable. Gabby's stepfather, James Schmidt, later said in interviews that he noticed a change in Gabby's behavior in the weeks leading up to the trip, that she seemed more anxious, more withdrawn, that she would sometimes go silent in ways she hadn't before. But the videos were beautiful. The locations were stunning, and Gabby on screen smiled and smiled and smiled. By early August, the couple had made their way west through Kansas, Colorado, into Utah. They visited Capitol Reef National Park. They camped in desert spaces that stretched out to the horizon. And then on the morning of August 12th, 2021, at some point before 4 p.m., something happened. We don't know exactly what. What we know is this: at 4:17 p.m., a man called 911 from near Arches National Park in Moab, Utah. He had seen something he couldn't not report. He said he had witnessed a male slapping a female. He watched them get back into a white van and drive away. He gave the van's description to the dispatcher. Then he hung up. And that call, less than 3 minutes long, would become the most important document in the Gabby Petito case. Officers pulled over the white Ford Transit van on the road into arches. Body camera footage, which was released to the public weeks later, shows what happened next. Brian Laundrie stepped out of the van first.
You want to do me a favor? Let's go ahead and get you to step out of the vehicle, alrighty? Come on over here. You're not in any trouble right now. So, tell me what's going on.
She just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her, so like I lock the car and I walk away from her. What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything, so I give her time, and we really had a nice morning, if anything, but she just got worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going.
Scratched Brian's face with her fingernails. She said it was her fault. She kept saying he didn't do anything. The officers made a decision. They labeled the incident a mental and emotional health episode, not a domestic assault, not a crime. They separated the couple for the night. Brian stayed at a motel. Gabby stayed in the van. No arrests were made, no charges were filed. The body camera footage was filed away. And the next morning, the couple reunited. They continued their trip. What those officers did not know, could not have known, though investigators would later ask hard questions about whether they should have, was that they were the last law enforcement officers to see Gabby Petito alive. Looking back at the body cam footage now, knowing what we know, it is one of the most difficult things to watch. Gabby Petito sitting in the back of that patrol car, crying and scared and minimizing, saying he didn't do anything, while the officers let her go, while the clock kept running. After the traffic stop, the couple continued west. They drove through Utah, into Nevada, up to Idaho, eventually into Wyoming. On August 25th, Gabby sent what would be the last message her mother ever received from her directly. It came as a text. No service in Yosemite, it read. That was it, 8 words. But there was something wrong with that message. Yosemite National Park is in California. According to investigators, by August 25th, Gabby and Brian were in Wyoming, nearly 1,000 miles away. The message didn't make sense. Her mother, Nicole Schmidt, would later say that something felt off, but she didn't push. She didn't want to worry. She trusted that Gabby was fine. More texts came after that. They arrived at intervals. They were short, affectionate, and in Gabby's voice. But they were not from Gabby. The FBI would later confirm that Brian Laundrie had been sending text messages from Gabby's phone after she was already dead. He had spent days constructing an illusion, pretending she was still alive, buying time. On September 1st, 2021, a week after Gabby's last real communication, Brian Laundrie drove Gabby's white Ford Transit van back to the family home in Northport, Florida. He was alone. He said nothing to the neighbors who watched him park. He went inside. He was quiet. He did not call Gabby's family. He did not file a missing persons report. He did not explain where she was. Gabby's family tried to reach her for days. The calls went unanswered. The texts went unread. On September 11th, 2021, 10 days after Brian returned without her, Gabby's mother called police. Her daughter was missing. When investigators went to the Laundrie home to speak with Brian, they were met with a wall of silence. Brian Laundrie refused to speak to law enforcement. His parents hired an attorney, and Brian said nothing. The nation watched. Within days of Gabby's disappearance going public, the case had become a cultural phenomenon, a story that consumed social media, cable news, and true crime communities simultaneously. TikTok users analyzed her old videos frame by frame, looking for warning signs. Armchair investigators mapped her route. People who had camped near her last known location came forward to share what they'd seen. The search for Gabby Petito became, for several weeks, the most followed missing persons case in modern American history. Critics pointed out, not without validity, that missing women of color receive a fraction of this attention. It was a conversation worth having. It was also true that Gabby Petito deserved to be found. The break came quickly. On September 19th, 2021, a team of FBI agents and law enforcement officers located human remains in the Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming at a dispersed camping area near Spread Creek. The area was remote. Without the coordinates gathered through the investigation, it might never have been found. The Teton County coroner confirmed what everyone feared. The remains were those of Gabrielle Petito. She was 22 years old. She had been dead for 3 to 4 weeks. Her cause of death was manual strangulation. Someone had wrapped their hands around her throat and squeezed until she was gone. The coroner's report noted blunt force trauma to her head and neck as well. She had not died quickly or painlessly, and she had been left there alone in the wilderness, while Brian Laundrie drove her van home, texted her family pretending to be her, and said nothing. 3 days before Gabby's remains were found, Brian Laundrie disappeared. On September 13th, he told his parents he was going for a hike at the Carlton Reserve, a 25,000-acre nature preserve near Northport. He never came home. His parents reported him missing on September 17th. For weeks, law enforcement searched the Carlton Reserve, thousands of acres of swamp, brush, and dense Florida wilderness. They found nothing. Then on October 20th, 2021, a full month after Brian vanished, his parents returned to the reserve with FBI agents to search a specific area that had previously been underwater during flooding. What they found was waiting in the mud: a backpack, a notebook, a revolver, and nearby, human skeletal remains. The remains were confirmed to be Brian Laundrie. A medical examiner determined he had died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. In January 2022, the FBI released the contents of the notebook. In it, Brian Laundrie had written a confession. He described the night he killed Gabby, writing that they had been hiking near Grand Teton in Wyoming when it grew dark, that Gabby had slipped and fallen near water, that she was struggling and suffering. He wrote that he had ended her life, that he thought it was merciful, that it was what she wanted. He wrote, "I knew I couldn't go on without her." The FBI declined to characterize the notebook as a full and accurate account of events, noting that it contained only Laundrie's own version, a version written by a man trying to frame a murder as mercy. Gabby Petito had not asked to die. She had gone on a road trip to see the world. She had been 22 years old, engaged, happy enough to post it, alive enough to document every moment. And she had trusted the wrong person with her life. Gabrielle Venora Petito was buried in Blue Point, New York, on September 26, 2021, her home state just miles from where she grew up. Her family established the Gabby Petito Foundation, dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence and funding search efforts for missing persons. Every year on her birthday, her family posts something. Her mother writes letters. Her father speaks at awareness events. They have turned grief into purpose because Gabby cannot speak anymore. But the women still missing, the ones whose names never trended, whose faces never appeared on cable news, they need someone too. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day at 1-800-7997-233. Thank you for watching Crimson Files. If this story moved you, please subscribe, because every case on this channel is someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's whole world. Don't let them be forgotten.